Call this General Services meeting together November the 27th, 2017 at 12 noon, and we have 6 items on the agenda. First one is 3-year agreement for food concession at Independence Point. Bill Greenwood.
Well, thank you, Councilman. This is an agreement, we have an ongoing agreement since 2009 with Randy Folk, and his team's done a good job. All they have to do is give us a written request and for renewal, and that's what we're here to do.
Any questions?
I have a question, and I agree Randy does a great job, and it's so fun for the community to have the Tiki Hut at Independence Point. But is there a process for RFQs? If someone else was interested, what would that process be?
In the past, what we've done is normally when they decide, the vendor decides not to renew is when it comes available.
Okay.
And that's what we've done in the past, but doesn't mean that we couldn't consider something else, but that's the way we've run it. And when it became available, when Fantastics Food gave it up in 2009, is when Randy went ahead and was able to put a bid in on it.
Thank you.
So just to follow up to that, there's not a clause in the contract that gives them the first right of refusal to renew?
No.
Okay, need a motion.
I'll make a motion to recommend to City Council to renew their agreement with Tiki Hut for the 2018, 19, and 20 season.
Second?
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Second item is water-based business. Bill, again.
Yes, last summer and previous summers, we've had several different types of businesses that came to us that wanted to have what I call the water-based business. That means the main portion of their operation would be on the water with some sort of ticketing that might be on public lands. We work with those folks, and we're unable to come up with a way that fire and police felt comfortable with the ability to manage those businesses. And so what we're asking for is we're not interested in those businesses within our jurisdictions. Jurisdiction is 1,000 feet. There were a couple of those businesses that were running businesses outside our jurisdiction, and that goes under county. And so we don't have any control over that, but we, at this time, are not interested in that.
Okay.
And the Park and Rec Commission made that statement and Ron was there.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Okay, any discussion?
I have a couple questions.
Okay.
So I know just from discussions with you throughout the summer and last year that you've been in contact with the county and, is it Idaho Department of Lands?
Correct.
And do they share these same sentiments? Are they supportive of this? Have you asked them specifically, or?
So they have some difficulty with these businesses as well for those same compliances that they were unable to provide for us.
And so you mentioned also fire and PD, and if there was an accident or a need to respond to a situation and they were further than 1,000 feet out, so not on city property, but further.
So fire told me that they would still participate in that because the person would need help. And in fact, when I spoke with Mr. Lopper, he had asked for safety plans, and we're told that they were going to provide a safety plan. They did not provide a safety plan, and at the end of that, their safety plan was that they were going to call 911. That was their idea of safety plan. So even outside of our 1,000 feet, to answer your question, I think, is that our fire department, paramedic, would still respond.
So one of the biggest concerns, and I think to all of us, is the safety on the water.
Mhm.
And our role in that safety, the city's role in that safety. So even though they're outside our jurisdiction, we would respond, which I understand and obviously support. But do we have any safeguards or boundaries we can enforce to ensure that they are following all proper protocol to make their apparatus or their whatever's on the water the safest that it can be to our standards? Or because that they're out of our jurisdiction, do we lose some of that control, and our role is only to respond for an accident, not help with preventative measures?
The other agencies that would fall under that jurisdiction outside of our boundary have asked for the same things that we've asked for. And so whether the business really does what they're being asked is a difficult thing, because there was some operation that took place that were not on the protocol or following protocol that even outside our jurisdiction. So Coast Guard asked for some things. Those compliances weren't fulfilled. The state asked for some things and county asked for some things. And there occasionally was a lot of crosstalk about what they were going to do, but what they did do or didn't do, that didn't happen. For example, I had reports of people that went out on a boat to get to the facility itself, and there was not a lifeguard that was really patrolling and making certain that the people using the piece of the apparatus were safe. They were waving boats in that were under prop, and there were swimmers around, and there was no way for anybody really safely to come off the boat and onto the vessel or the apparatus. And there were people swimming around, and the person that was busy chatting with people and not really doing what lifeguards are supposed to do, and that's scan. And they're not supposed to be, if you have been around lifeguards, they don't talk to you. They don't listen to anybody near them. Their job, their sole purpose is to scan the water, and that wasn't taking place. To ask about the control of that, the other jurisdictions have those same things that we asked, as I said moments ago. To enforce it's very difficult, because you're going to have to be out there monitoring all the time, and are they going to do what we're asking to do? Well, so far our experience was they did not do the things that were asked of them by us and others.
Any other questions?
So, Bill, the question before us is, do we want to create a commercial offshore water-based business opportunity? This isn't about any one business. It's about an ordinance that would govern any offshore business opportunities. And what I'm hearing and I understand is that most jurisdictions agree that this isn't a definite no, this is a not at this time. There may be some opportunities in the future that if there were the ability to have multi-jurisdictions agree on the safety issues, agree on the enforcement, agree on the protocol, it could, in the future, enhance some recreational activities on the water.
It could.
But that's not what we're being asked to do. What we're being asked to do is based on recent history, do we want to create this offshore ordinance? And that's what's before us today, right?
Correct, because
Okay.
you're right. There were, let's just talk about what other businesses there were. There was a taxi service, there was a hovercraft type thing, and so there was a lot of, and where we run into the difficulty is how are we going to bring people from this water-based business through our area where our citizens are swimming to pick up customers and move back and forth. That was one of the biggest issues that the commission had, and how that was going to be dealt with, and it was never they didn't bring it to us in a way that was acceptable, that they could demonstrate that it was safe. You know, they talked about jet skis, they talked about a lot of their stuff. So whatever the business is, they're in the water, they're having to get to the shore through where our swimmers are. And that was another big issue for safety as well.
And I agree with the challenges that this has created, but I know that as our communities grow and they come here for water activity, I'd hope that, and I'm Parks and Recs, I'm not on that commission, but I would hope that we can take a look at things even off of Independence Point, some sharing in the future where I don't know what the next generation is going to come up with as far as what they think is fun to do on the water. But I know that right now, I don't feel that any of these jurisdictions are in agreement that we have any sort of consensus on how we would govern and manage.
And you
this
mentioned
sort of
Independence Point,
operations.
and the commission felt real strong about that because Independence Point is already busy. The seaplanes there, the cruise boats are coming in and out of our facility on our dock, and they really felt that was just one on there that our citizens would stay safe.
Right. It's just that those, but those activities have been there for a long time, and I even know that the parasail person doesn't even operate on Saturdays. And
Correct.
so I'm going, I just hope that we don't just shut the door to recreational opportunity in the future, but I'm in agreement that currently there isn't a way to enforce and keep one safe. So, anyway, based on that, I don't have any other questions, so.
Okay, need a motion.
Well, I would make a motion that we recommend that council does not create an offshore water-based business opportunity within the city's jurisdiction at this time.
Second.
Any more discussion?
Well, I think it's just important to note that until we can ensure the safety of our community and the residents, off the water, that we need to continue to do more work on this and put more time in cooperation with the other agencies. That, safety is definitely our top priority.
Okay.
I agree.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Third thing, skate park funding, Bill.
So we are working on a skate park for our new Four Corners area there down by Memorial Park. We're calling Memorial Park, not Memorial Field, but Memorial Park. And we went for a grant. Ignite had given us $200,000 in matching funds. We did not get the land and water grant that we'd hoped for. Monty had worked real closely with the state, and they felt that our grant looked really, really good, and everybody was excited about it, and even the skate guys were involved in that, and they went down to Boise with our staff and made the presentation, and we did not get the grant. So I went back to Ignite and asked if they would be willing to participate, and they offered up another $150,000. And what our skin in the game, as Mr. Burns likes to talk about, is $50,000 out of Parks Capital. The Parks Commission felt that's a great use of that fund. It's exactly what it's designed for, and we're looking for your approval on that.
Okay, any questions?
I just have two things. One is that the reason for moving forward with this right now is partially, this is a yes or no question I'm asking,
Right.
Is because of the development of the Four Corners right
Correct.
now. So that if this were delayed, it would be more expensive to do in the future, and so it is a cost savings in the timing of the planning of the development of
Correct.
Four Corners. And then my other question is it in the plans to pursue, maybe Monty knows this land and water grant again in the future for
Yes.
enhancements to this park?
Yeah, so we have some other phase. The bowl element is something that the skate community is interested in doing, and there's a couple of spots. That's sort of an elliptical shape. More on the southern east end, there's a location, and then on the northern west end, there's a location where we could develop a bowl where you could drop in and out of the plaza-style design, and, so it would feel like it's one. We're hopeful that the numbers come in good, and we might be able to do more with that than what we have. So, but to answer your question, yes, we will go after grants in the future.
Great. Well, it's been a long time coming, and I appreciate you guys hanging in there and taking advantage of the savings by doing it now, and I'm looking forward to a,
Yeah, we are too.
can I quote Woody on this, a real bitchin' park? Is that okay?
Any other questions?
And I just have one. What is the balance in the Parks Capital Improvement Fund?
We're just about, with the allocations that you let us take for the resurfacing tennis courts, and this allocation gives us about 3.5.
Okay, need a motion.
I'll make a motion to allocate $50,000 from Parks Capital Improvement Fund to complete the funding shortfall to build a new skate park at Memorial Park and to accept the Ignite funding.
Second.
Okay, any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Okay, item number 4, annual road and street financial report. Troy Tymason.
Good afternoon, council members. I come before you today for the annual road and street financial report. This is very important because we share with the state of Idaho how we've been using funds. Article 7, Section 17 of the Idaho Constitution requires that the proceeds of taxes on gasoline and other motor vehicle fuels, as well as vehicle registration fees, be spent solely on what is in this report. That is construction, repair, maintenance, traffic supervision of the public highways of the great state of Idaho. And no part of such revenue shall, by transfer of funds or otherwise, be diverted to any other purposes whatsoever. So our forefathers had the vision that this money needs to go back into roads. That's what this report actually tells you about. We receive in the past fiscal year $2.3 million in revenues from the state. You have had a very active year as a city on what we've been doing in the roads and have spent over $8 million. So other sources would include Ignite, our grants that we get, your capitalization fees for roads. You've got the chip seal overlay program. So all of those are captured in here. We capture overhead. And so at the end of the report, you do see that we took in more revenues than what we spent. And that's fine because we spent well in excess of $2.3 million that came from this state fund. So we are disclosing to you, and there's a number of supporting documents that build into this report. We've done this annually. It keeps us in compliance with Idaho Code and our state constitution. I would entertain any questions you might have.
Any questions?
I just had one on, naturally, I can't find it right now when I'm looking for it, so I'm going from memory, but there was a large expenditure, I think, on stormwater items, and is that, that ties into roads in that it's drainage, but not in our other utility because it's drainage off of the roads, or tell me about that.
Yeah, the way we look at the roads is that you'll also see streetlights in here as well. So I believe that our forefathers wanted us to deliver an infrastructure that would hold up during spring when it's wet, winter when the snow's piling up, and still be safe with streetlights. So we look at all those added amenities that go into a project so as to capture that. Because if we're, for instance, buying right-of-way in order to put swales in and things like that, distinctly adds to the cost of a project on a new road or even a reconstruction of a road. You've got a swale that is just off Government Way north of Dalton. That's a pretty significant piece of ground that captures a lot of drainage water coming off the road system in a swale. So as we work with Tim in the street department, that's how we capture those expenses to put into this report.
Okay. And then this runs on the fiscal year?
It does run
So
on a
this-
fiscal year.
Okay.
So we need to have this in. We post it in the newspaper. Again, for the added disclosure, the transparency of what we're doing, questions can be asked. And every year you have spent more than what we've received. 3 years ago, we would show how much more we had spent than what we'd received. But they cut us off now and don't want to see that we're spending more than what it is we received, and so we don't have a credit balance going forward, which we were quite proud of during those years.
Any other questions?
Nope.
Need a motion?
I need to be clear. Are you asking council to accept the report as presented or to review the report?
I'm asking for it to be accepted so we can move it forward.
All right. So then I would make a motion that we approve the annual road and street financial report for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2017.
Any other questions?
Second.
Or second? Okay, any other questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thanks, Troy. Item number 5, cooperative agreement for mutual aid assistance with Idaho Department of Lands. Fire Chief Kenny Gabriel.
Good afternoon. This is kind of a good one and a fun one for us. About over 10 years ago, we approached the Department of Lands and became the first city in the state to have a mutual aid agreement with them. That kind of happened because of my fear of how our city was growing outwards and how we were encroaching into the mountains and the incredible challenge that gives us for fighting fire. Our concern was how very much a airplane and a helicopter cost, $800 an hour. So we kind of went into an agreement with them, and from that has stemmed this agreement that's actually being used throughout the state. So what we're asking for now is kind of a house cleaning deal. We've had this for quite some time. They just want us to re-up it. It'll be good. We're hoping for 5 more years after this. It's gone through legal, and Randy's words were, this is real good for us, and what are they getting out of it? But, we're working with them, and when their resources get stretched very thin, there's a great opportunity that we will go outside the city to help them. This agreement assures that we get reimbursed for that, so it's a great win-win for the city.
Any questions?
Just one question. So this is a 5-year agreement?
It's not set up for that. They want to do kind of like we've done with IDL, and they
Okay.
do those in 5 years. We don't have that yet, but I don't think I'll be bringing this to you again next year.
Okay.
Okay, any questions?
And just out of curiosity, is this an agreement that allowed you to be able to call in a helicopter when there were the fires on Tubbs Hill? So that we had that
Yes,
assistance?
and then they cover that
fast?
expense.
Okay.
Okay, need a motion.
I'll make a motion to allow the fire department to enter into a cooperative agreement for mutual aid assistance with IDL.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thanks, Kenny.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 6, complete streets ordinance. Monty McCullough. Monty.
Good afternoon. So, in 2009, the city adopted a complete streets policy at the recommendation of the Coeur d'Alene Ped Bike Committee. The policy was basically a comprehensive plan whenever we rebuild new streets or upgrade old streets to include all forms of transportation. We already had some standards in place through our engineering department that pretty much addressed most of those, but the policy was able to put it in one place so that the city could show what their commitment was to complete streets. What we're doing now is we're upgrading the policy to an ordinance, and what that is that'll give it a little more strength. So all these, everything in the ordinance is already in place. We're just making it so that, let's say, Chris Bosley, if he retires in 50 or 60 years, the next engineer that comes in isn't as friendly towards all modes of transportation, then this would take the power to eliminate those bike lanes from a plan or a transit stop from one person and make it the decision to be made by more than one person. A lot of other cities are moving this direction just to give their policies more teeth as an ordinance. And it also adds a checklist to the back of the ordinance so that developers and people who are building these streets outside the city can have a checklist to address all the different types of amenities that would go into a new street. So that's basically what we're doing with this ordinance. We're just strengthening a policy we already have.
Okay, question. This says it's supposed to go to Public Works Committee. They're not having a meeting?
I did not see where that's supposed to go
It's
to
at the
public.
bottom.
In the
It's-
motion.
Oh, you know what I did is I copied the old one from 2009 and just forgot to change that one little word.
Okay. Okay, any questions? Go ahead.
I have one. So Marty, in this is an ordinance now, and I'm sometimes wary of new ordinance that might have unintended consequences. So I'm wondering, there are, it looks like 6 or 7 different associations, Institute of Transportation, ITD, American Association of State Highways, that are all melding into this checklist for the Complete Streets program. Do those, or does the ordinance address how this would or could possibly hamper business as far as commercial activity as we move forward? Specifically, I'm thinking of things like delivery trucks that drop lift gates in the middle of the streets, and these businesses who rely on inventory coming in through this infrastructure. Does this address any of that? I don't want to inhibit jobs or business activity by limiting that if it's not addressed.
Right, so it's not addressed as far as, specifically spelling that out, but if you took a road, let's say Sherman Avenue, and you're going to completely rebuild it, and the engineers and the planners looked at that road and said, are we going to put bike lanes here? We're going to move the buildings back and add bike lanes and parking. We're going to get rid of parking. That would still have to go through the process of getting everybody's approval to remove that parking. And let's say it's not Sherman, it's some other street that they went through and got approval to remove the parking. If the truck parks in the middle of the road currently because cars are parked in that area, then parking being removed and having a bike lane there, let's say, or a transit stop, would really benefit those trucks because they wouldn't have to go around parked cars. So I couldn't see a scenario where they would really inhibit the delivery trucks from delivering services or delivering products.
But that's not part of the ordinance. This really just addresses the bicycle pedestrian
Right.
safety issues. It doesn't address how this ordinance is going to affect infrastructure for businesses, right?
No, it does look at all uses for the street. So transit could be part of that, or delivery could be part of that. So you'd have
Okay.
buses, pedestrians, bikes,
And commercial.
cars, commercial vehicles as well.
Okay. I just want to be comfortable that that piece isn't left out of the ordinance, and I kind of didn't see it specifically addressed, so it has to be inside the rest of the institute
Okay,
of
any
these
other
other 6
questions?
organizations.
I don't have a question, but I do want to thank our Bike Ped Advisory Committee for their work with Monty on this and Chris. And also, I am just thrilled to make this an ordinance because it demonstrates our commitment to be a bicycle and pedestrian-friendly community, which is a win-win overall, as we all know. So I would be thrilled to make a motion.
Go ahead.
I would make a motion to recommend to council the adoption of a complete streets ordinance.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Say aye. Any opposed? Okay, anything else? Mike, do you have anything?
Yes, sir.
Okay, where's Troy? Okay, I want to see you after the meeting. Okay, we're adjourned.
What did you do?